This year should be a blessing and a merit for the health and success of the families of Regina Bas Yosef Reuven and Yeshaya ben Yisrael, Benjamin Wolf, ben Tzvi Hersh, Baruch ben Benjamin Wolf. They should all have tremendous mazel and bracha. And also I want to dedicate the shir to our Fush Lema for Esther Liba Bas Chaya Yafa. Right. Okay, we are, I hope everybody has at least 4 hours. No, I'm joking. But the truth is, all at once, right? Oh, you won't have problems. Look, we are in obviously a very important kufa. Obviously, if you think about it, in the entire year, this is one of the most important times of the Jewish calendar. It's obvious, you know. Now, I'm only giving one shir, so I thought it would be very interesting, which I really haven't done. I usually piecemeal them, which means I separate them, because each one really needs, you know, really a lengthy explanation and many chazals. But I thought I would do something very unique, I think, anyway. And what that is to explain the theme of 5 times in one shot. So you really see what's called the unity, and you really grab the essence of what is happening in Tishrei, in this month. What is it really all about? And I'm thinking that, I'm hoping, and I also think that you're going to hear ideas that I don't really know if you've ever heard before. My approach is different. It's very, I don't know if there's such a word, but it's called Ramchalian, Rab Moshe Chaim Lutzato. I've been learning him for 65 years, whatever. Anyway, and of course his approach is very unique. So the ideas that I will introduce in many ways probably will surprise you, especially when you see the commonality in the theme of what's going on. So if you'll bear with me, I'm sure you'll find it very interesting, because it's really in many ways new ideas, and in many ways it's fascinating, because it will allow you to perceive what's going on today, you know, in a much greater sense of comprehension, much greater. Anyway, so what I want to start off, which there's a lot of people that have called me or whatever, I'm one of the things that I do, which is probably unique, is I interpret current events based on the divine agenda. I don't know how many people do that, but that's one of the things that I do. And there is something that's happening today which is extraordinary, and I just wanted to mention that because it's very much tied to Rosh Hashanah and so on. So I just wanted to start with that. What is that? We all know, because we are all believing Jews, Maiminim and so on, that everything that occurs is based on a divine plan. There is nothing outside of the divine plan that occurs that isn't orchestrated by God. Everything. Now, we don't understand really what that means, the whole concept of who the Rebbe Shem really is and why he does what he does, which is always fascinating, obviously, is a very important concept. So that's something we clearly believe in, that everything is from the Rebbe Shem. But what's more important, and I don't know if it's more important, but what's more essential is that whatever the Rebbe Shem does, there's only one motive. That's how simple everything boils down to, although it's infinitely complex because of the parts and all the components of that plan. And that is to promote the ultimate geula. But the truth is, that's not even what the Rebbe Shem wants. Very simply, because you have to understand this concept, the fundamental operation of the Bria is called tikkun, to rectify creation, which is a very important idea. In other words, without getting into a lot, because each idea is really a whole shiur in itself, but what the Rebbe Shem did is he, in a certain sense, he was mechaser. He created a deficiency in the Bria, in creation. And what he wants is man, or specifically today is Jews, is to rectify, which means to repair, to restore the original condition of the Bria. In the first day of creation, the Rebbe Shem was completely pervasive throughout creation. That was the deal, so to speak. And the second day, the Rebbe Shem created what's called a hester, a concealment of himself. And ultimately what he wants is somebody to bring him back. And therefore that's called tikkun, rectification, correction, repair, restoration. They all mean the same thing. But the Rebbe Shem will not do it. He needs mankind, specifically the Jews, to do it. And that's called tikkun, rectification. Very important concept. And that's really all the Rebbe Shem wants. Not interested in anything else. He wants to come back. And he created a deficiency in creation in order to give mankind, or the Jewish people specifically, a sukkos, a merit. That if they do bring him back with specific actions, they will merit an eternal life. That's really what it's all about. So we understand what the concept of tikkun is, which is a very important idea. And we'll see why it's so important, you know. So we have that idea. And now, like I say, you can go on and on. How does the Rebbe Shem do that? What does it mean that he comes back? Because I'm not talking here about Olam Haba. Olam Haba is much later. I'm talking about Yemos HaMashiach, which is a tekufa, a period of time that precedes Olam Haba by at least 3,000 years, which is surprising to most people. And there's an entire history. So the Russian wants to, I wouldn't use the word desperately, but it's an interesting word, to come back. He really wants to come back. Because there's a Yalkut Shemoni that says that the Rebbe Shem is metzapeh for the Geula. He looks forward. You know, it's not like he doesn't want it. No, he looks forward with tremendous anticipation when he comes back and reunites with Klal Yisrael. That's really his ardent desire. And it's not only that, but really he wants to come back to mankind because he wants to appear the real truth of creation, who he really is, and that the world is a physical world, but it's only to prevent us from seeing the Rebbe Shem unless we remove the physicality. And that's really what we have to do. We have to remove the physicality of the world from a physical world and transform it into a spiritual world. Right. As we automatically see, we know that we believe in Tchias HaMesim, resurrection of the dead. And what's fascinating about that is that this occurs in the Messianic era, right? And the Messianic era is the last tekufa of Olam Hazeh. It's really what it is. It is not Olam Haba. It's really not even Gan Eden. What it is a physical world that is sort of like, it's got everything. But one of the things that's Tchias HaMesim. Now, resurrection of the dead is not normal. It's not physical. How does a dead man walk around, right? Think about that. So obviously the world is no longer running in its natural course. But ultimately that tells us that the world will be very different then than it is now. Okay? And the essential difference is there's no barrier for us to experience the Ribono Shel Olam. Very important concept. And that is the beginning of the Geula, or the Tikkun finality. It's really what it is. Yemos HaMashiach is the end. And the world changes. And then after the year 6000, which is the English year 2240, the entire Bria changes into a spiritual universe. Right. But anyway, that's a different discussion and so on. Anyway, by the way, if anybody wants, I am on Torah Anytime. I have over 500 shiurim on Torah Anytime. I'm on YouTube, for those who have the internet. I have my own website. And like I say, I have over 500 shiurim on a tremendous amount of topics. So if you are curious to see or to listen to any other topics, you know, be my guest. There's a lot of fascinating material there. Yes.
There's a podcast.
There's what?
Podcast.
There is? What's a podcast?
Download the audio.
Oh, you can download the audio. Right, okay. And by the way, somebody is typing up all my shiurim. And I think over 100 have been typed up, so you can read it. It's interesting. If you don't want to listen, you can read it on Shabbos. It's a lot of people do that. Okay, now, why am I talking about Tikkun, right? Because of this. Rosh Hashanah, what is Rosh Hashanah really all about? Now, there's obviously something very strange about Rosh Hashanah for many reasons. First of all, it's a Yom Adin. I mean, we know that, right? It's a day of judgment. What's the problem with that? Who ever heard of a day of judgment for one day? Imagine if New York had the courts open only one day. Can you imagine what would happen to the other 364 days? Right? I mean, it probably is already happening, right? In New York and all over the United States. But how could you have a day of judgment for one day? That doesn't even make sense. And one of the things that we know is that everything is judged. Malachim, animals, you name it. Every living being, kol ba'olam, is judged. The question is, that doesn't make any sense. Why? Because you can only be judged if you have free will. Then you are held accountable. But how can an animal be judged, or a malach? They don't have any bechira. So why would they be judged? Clearly there's something going on Rosh Hashanah which is much more than the Day of Judgment. So I wanted to give you that perspective. What is that? And really, you really know the answer, but you got to put them together. Let me ask something. If you open a business, let's say on January 2nd, right? Whatever you want to sell, right? It would make sense that you want to evaluate or assess the business, right? You want to see, are you making any money? Maybe you have too much inventory. Maybe you don't have enough advertising, right? You got to check it out. So when do you do it? You don't do it the next day. There's no time, right, to actualize the business. So what you do is you wait a year, right? And you have an assessment day, evaluation, right? And you check out the business to see if you made any money. Correct? Okay. Don't you think the Rabbi Shem does that to the Bria? What does that mean? What does that really mean, that he checks this out? It means the following. The Rabbi Shem has to, which is what he does, he needs to evaluate where is the tikkun process. Where is it? How much mitzvahs did the Jews do that year? Because remember, if they do mitzvahs, they bring God closer. If they do averis, then they move God further away. So you always need an evaluation. Where are they holding of tikkun? So it's like a boss has a company, right? And after a year, he evaluates the company. It's not that he evaluates each person, because each person contributes to that company. What he really wants to do is check out the money situation. Is he making any money? Right? Therefore, he evaluates everybody, because they're all contributors, right, to the success of the business. Very obvious. That's really what Rosh Hashanah is about. Rosh Hashanah is not so much about you as an individual, although obviously that's part of it. Why? Because you contribute to the success, right? Are you doing your work, right? Are the Jews doing all the mitzvahs to bring God closer? Or no, they're doing averis. Are the Jews assimilated, intermarried, or are the Jews learning Torah, right? This is the business, which I will get to, okay? To understand the tikkun process, you see. And the Rebbe Shem has to evaluate this situation. Therefore, he selected one day out of the year. That's why there's only one day needed. One day out of the year to decide where are we holding. That's the fascinating idea. You see, where is the tikkun process or the status of tikkun holding? Why? Because if it's not holding very far, or if the Jews have in certain ways destroyed creation by wholesale averis, sinning, right, then he has to readjust the Bria, right? He has to change. He has to readjust the entire situation. For instance, if the Jews are in Golis in Spain, right, and they're assimilating, which is what they were doing in Spain, the Rosh has to readjust. What is the readjustment? Spain has to throw them out. It's an oynish. That's why they were able to do it. Why? Because the Jews were assimilating in Spain, so the Rebbe had to readjust the entire situation. So he allowed, he caused, whatever, Spain to eject the Jews by the ridiculous nonsense of forcing the Jews to convert. Okay, why? Because they were not doing the tikkun in Spain. They were committing too many averos. Now, we don't perceive anything, but the Rebbe knows everything. And therefore, he decided that in 1492, I'm just giving you one example out of thousands of years of history, right? He decided that Spain is not the place that they can rectify creation. It's not working. I got to throw them out, put them into another land that has a different character structure. And that's the secret of the different 70 nations, so that they can continue doing the tikkun. You see? And the Rosh Hashanah makes this unbelievable cheshbon, accounting, instantly where they're standing. That's what Rosh Hashanah really is. It is a day of the assessment, Hayom Haras Olam, right? This is the day of the entire Bria. So it makes sense. Many questions are answered. Certainly not going to answer all of them. But for instance, why is an evaluation or Yom Adin one day? Because you don't need more than one day to figure out where the Bria is. That's all you need. But the Gemara says that every Jew is judged every day, right? When they judge personally, not the Bria, so then you need to take a look at what they're doing every day to readjust it, if they need a kapara or whatever, so they can go on with their mission of tikkun. But if it's the Bria, all you need is one day. And what day is that? Rosh Hashanah, Aleph Tishrei. What's the significance of Aleph Tishrei? Adam Harishon was created. When did the tikkun start? By Adam Harishon's birth. Or I should say his creation, right? Because before Adam Harishon, there's no tikkun possible, there's no man. When did the tikkun process start? Right? On Aleph Tishrei. So 1 year, remember I said the anniversary date, the Baruch now will evaluate on that day when the business started. You see? Why is everything judged? Everything. Not because they're necessarily guilty, you see, because many things don't contribute to the Bria, you see. For instance, there's 300,000 species of beetles. None of them contribute to the Bria, right? Why are there 300,000 species of beetles? Species, not beetles. There are quadrillions of beetles, and they're all crawling in your backyard, right? That's what we know, right? Why? Because we don't realize that each species, each beetle is needed to proceed with the tikkun. This is infinite, and the chokhmah behind it is beyond comprehension. Why are there so many organisms, living organisms? Scientists estimate that over 100 million organisms living. Why? Because each one has its place in the mission. But most of them don't have bechira, they don't have free will, you see. So what the Rosh Hashanah does is he has to also readjust them. Because it may mean, for instance, all of a sudden, a country's not doing what it has to do in general. So Rosh Hashanah has to judge a swarm of locusts in Africa. And he says, well, I got to send this swarm to, let's say, Spain, cross the Mediterranean, and wreak havoc with the produce. Right? That's part of the tikkun. But the locusts didn't do anything wrong, but they are now used as part of the assessment that Spain needs, or whatever country in the Middle East needs a oynish. So I'm going to take them. So therefore the locusts, grasshoppers, have to be reevaluated where they will be in order to provide either punishment or whatever to another country. Therefore everything has to be readjusted. You see? That's why it has nothing to do if you're bechira. We are judged because we have free will. Everything is judged because they now may have to change their situation in order that they can do the tikkun in a different situation. You see? So therefore everything has to be readjusted, even if they're not guilty. And that's what it means. Kol bo olam. Everything is readjusted. It's a very important idea. You see, this concept, when you begin to realize that it's not a Yom Hadin. It's really a day of assessment of the entire tikkun process. And that answers many, many questions, and so on, which you begin to see, and so on. Great, okay. But there's an interesting concept here. What is the concept? A boss comes into his factory. He sits down at his desk, right? He's got an office in his business, right? He sits down and he says, I got to take an inventory. I got to find out, am I making any money? What's wrong? Who's not working? Etc. It's the whole evaluation. Does he have to tell anybody? Of course not. He's the boss. He sits down, gets all whatever documents he needs, and he takes a look. Who's doing what? Where am I holding? The accounting, the inventory, the stock, everything. The market, is there enough advertising? He does it himself. Or he has one or two people providing him with the information. Whatever, right? He doesn't have to tell the workers what's happening. All he has to do is give them a pink slip if they're not doing the job. That's all he does, right? The Rebbe Shem does not do that. Why? And this is a very important idea. The Rebbe Shem is not a boss. He's a father. Big difference. He wants his son to succeed. So therefore, he wants to tell his son, by the way, I'm evaluating you. You should know. He tells that to his son. He warns them of the impending evaluation of the entire Bria, and guess what? You are included in that evaluation to see where do you stand in your contribution to the tikkun. Remember, every Jew has his part in the creation to further the creation. Everybody. We don't necessarily know what it is, but we are all directed in that direction. We have to be, or else we would be created for nothing. But the amazing thing is not only we, every living creature has a mission in the tikkun process. How do you know? Because God does not create anything umzist, which means for nothing. He doesn't do that. Every single thing created must have a purpose. And the purpose is the mission. And what is the mission? To further the tikkun process, to bring God back. The problem is that 99% of it, we have no idea. We don't even know why we're created or what our mission is, let alone, why that bug crawling on your floor, what is its mission? But it has, or it wouldn't exist. I know it's rather remarkable to hear that, because it's astounding, because the cheshbon is almost infinite. But that's what justifies the existence of everything. It must be part of the mission. The question is, does it have free will or not? That's the question, you see. But everything does. So therefore, the Rebbe Shem loves the Jewish people. That is his greatest love. Where does it say this? In Torah, Ki ahevcha Hashem lokecha. The Rebbe Shem never lies. He is Hashem lokechem emes. And he says an incredible thing. He says 3 things which when you read, you need to think about this. What it means for weeks. What is it? Ki ahevcha Hashem lokecha. God, your God, loves you. Now, it's not love that we have. Do we even love ourselves? Maybe not. A lot of people hate themselves. How much do you love your spouse? Well, at times you do, and at times you don't. Listen, that's what life is all about, and so on, And not only, even when you do love somebody, how intense is that love? Come on, let's be honest, right? You may love one child more than another child. So clearly there's a variation of love, isn't there? But when the Rebbe Shem says, I love you, that is the nth degree, that is infinite ahava. You can't love somebody more than the Rebbe Shem loves you, because he creates the whole concept of love, and he loves us. He says that. He never lies, and it's total. Could you imagine what that means? I know it's hard to believe, How can somebody love me? Sometimes we think, how does somebody love me with such a devotion? Far more, infinitely more than even my own mother or father. yet he does. So, if he loves us, he only wants the best, because anybody who loves anybody only wishes the best. Second thing it says, Ki hu ovicha, he's your father, right? Well, if the Rebbe Shem said that, he's not lying. He is our father. But wait a minute, that means he must act like a father. What is a father? I'm not talking about today's fathers, but what is an ideal, real father, right? He loves his kid. He'll do anything for his kid. And I do not exclude mothers. The Rebbe Shem calls himself a father, not a mother, But he even talks about mothers. The Nach, where he says, more than your mother could ever love you, I love you. So we can't even begin to understand. But he says that. So that's the second thing. And then he says, an astounding thing, Ki banim atem l'Hashem Elokechem. You are my children. What a threesome, right? He loves us, right? He's our father, and we are his kids, banim. Therefore, the Rebbe Shem says, I don't want to judge the Bria, because all of a sudden something's going to happen to you, and you're going to say to yourself, what happened? Why did I get demoted? Or why did I go bankrupt? Or whatever, and so on, Rebbe Shem says, no. I love them. I want them to be with me in Olam Haba. Therefore, I'm going to warn them. There you are. I'm going to warn them what I'm going to do. He didn't have to, right? And not only doesn't he have to, guess what? The Rebbe Shem, how quick is the judgment of God? It is far less than a nanosecond. It's instant. Instantly, he sees the entire Bria in one look. Can you imagine that? To see everything that exists at one time, instantly. It's astounding. But he does that because he's the Rebbe Shem, right? But he doesn't do that. He says, I'm going to take my time, right? I'm not going to do it in one shot, So maybe I know instantly what's going on, of course, and he knew it even in advance and so on, right? But I have to warn them. Where's the warning? Elul. He didn't have to tell us. The only reason why we know is that there's an Elul is because he wants to warn us. Why? Because he wants us to influence the verdict. That's the only reason why we have Elul. There is no other. He wants us as much as possible to do tshuva, to influence the verdict itself. A very important idea, the concept, okay? So, Elul is the first way that he warns us. Okay? So we got a month. Hopefully we get the message. Right? Hopefully. Right? But at least we now know 30 days in advance what's about to happen. The tikkun of the entire creation, malachim, spheres, you name it, without going all to that, is all evaluated. Right? That's the first thing. Then the second thing he tells us is Rosh Hashanah, is the day itself. And by the way, this is the day it's going to happen. You got 1 month, and you now have Aleph Tishrei, and it'll be the entire day. And guess what? If it's the entire day, then you could be mispal. You could do tshuva, because you had a whole day, And Chazal even made a second day, which is even better, that we can do tshuva. You have to begin to realize the chesed of the Rebbe Shem. He does not have to do this. And his decree, right, is absolute. There's no bribery here, right? And it's true life and death. It's not a make-believe thing. It's not a game. It's true, right? And it determines the fate of you, the family, all Klal Yisrael, and also the entire Bria world, right? America, you name it, right? And so on, right? Instantly. But the Jews determine the fate of the Bria. That's their power. That is the power of Tikkun. Only we can determine the fate of a creation, the world itself. Nobody else can. And there are many Chazals that talk about that. So the second major idea is Rosh Hashanah. It's a whole day. We are alerted to the fact that it's a court day, right? So get your act together. But wait a minute. What happens if we don't get our act together? Or we do a skimpy job. We pray, but do we really mean it? How much do we mean it? I'm going to do tshuva. Right. Boy, am I looking forward to the vacation in Sukkos. Well, I'm going to be able to go to the Bahamas. Or who knows what we're thinking on Rosh Hashanah, right? And so on, So Baruch Hashem says, look, I'm going to give you an appellate division. You know, there's the Court of Appeals, right? What is that? You don't like what the court said, so you can actually appeal the verdict. Well, what's the appeal? Aseret Tshuva. Isn't that interesting? That's what it is. What happens if we didn't do the job on Rosh Hashanah? We have a third chance, and that is the Aseret Tshuva, which is astounding. It's incredible. We got 10 days or whatever to rethink our position. And that's really what Aseret Tshuva is. So that's the third act of unbelievable chesed, that the Baruch Hashem does that. He's trying to get us to do tshuva desperately. Why? Because he loves us. That's the only reason why. There is no other reason why. And so on. But what happens if we don't do tshuva on Aseret Tshuva? Goes by, okay, it's nice, but we don't really wake up at that time. So what's next? We would think, well, if I could do tshuva on Aseret Tshuva, what's left? So then the Rabbi Hashem comes up with an astounding solution. What's our problem, really? I mean, it's a great deal to talk about. But the basic, you ever wonder, I don't understand, why is there tshuva on Yom Kippur? You do tshuva every day. There's a mitzvah to do tshuva every day. So why is Yom Kippur special? I'll tell you why. Because there's a big problem. Because the tshuva that you do itself has judgment. Well, the Satan gets up there and say, you call this a tshuva? You know, this person doesn't mean it. Or they're thinking about it, you know, or they want to do tshuva on one idea and everything else forget about. This is not tshuva. In other words, every tshuva you do has the opportunity to be prosecuted in heaven. How legitimate is it? This is the problem. It is subject to dinim. Think about that. Which makes sense. Everything is subject to dinim. Even your tshuva. How real is it? How sincere is it? This is a big problem. And this is really the problem, it looks like the problem of Rosh Hashanah and so on. Right? So we have 3 acts of chasodim. But wait a minute. If the problem with tshuva is it's subject to dinim, it's called kitrugim, prosecutions by the Satan. So the Baruch Hashem says, you know, I'm going to do something I've never done before, in this sense, right? And not only that, it's against my character. Why? Because I created the world employing the concept called din, or judgment. Everything basically has to be deserved at some level. You know what I'm going to do? Your problem is the prosecutor, the prosecuting attorney. Who is what? The Satan. Guess what? I'm dismissing the Satan. He doesn't work on Yom Kippur. Could you imagine? You go to court, you're being tried, and there's no prosecutor. Did you ever hear anything like that? So, I mean, if there's no prosecutor, right, guess what? Of course you're going to be released, freed. There's no prosecutor. There's nobody presenting an argument why you don't deserve to be forgiven. But wait a minute. How does that work? Because that's unheard of. The Baruch Hashem created the creation, the entire avodah, the entire work of a person is to earn through justice what he did, without getting into why and so on. Okay? So wait a minute. The prosecutor, which is a Satan, right? He has 3 jobs. His first job is to prosecute. Or I should say his first job is to tempt. He tempts you. He's called the Yetzer Hara. He tries to get you to sin. That's his job. Because you need to be tempted or else you'll never do anything. God wants you to be tempted. And are you going to withstand the temptation or not? And that is your merit. The second job, if you fail, you sin, then the prosecuting attorney becomes what? He becomes the prosecutor, where he will stand in front of heaven, in front of a bezdin, a heavenly tribunal, and prosecute you. That's his job, right? And the third job is if you're found guilty, then the Satan becomes the Malach HaMavos, the angel of death. That doesn't mean he kills you, but he's also responsible to execute the judgment of that court. 3 jobs for the Malach of Din. And that's the problem with our tshuva every day. So what the Baruch Hashem does something which is contrary to the fundamental principle of creation, justice. You have to earn through justice what you did. And what he does is he dismisses the Satan first, the job of prosecutor. So the Yetzer Hara is still around, right? And the Malach HaMavet is still around. But the prosecutor is not. And that is why the gematria of HaSatan is 364, not 365, because he doesn't work on that day. The Baruch Hashem sends him on a vacation. He cannot prosecute the Jewish people. So what does that mean for us? I'll tell you what it means. It's incredible. We come to court in heaven, right? All our neshamas are up there trying to defend ourselves, right? We start talking. So in a normal situation, what would happen? The Satan, in his prosecutorial bench, he's laughing his head off. He says, you call that a tshuva? Give me a break. All right? And, think about that. How sincere is the tshuva? Let's be honest and so on, We'd never make it. We'd never make it. I don't care if you do tshuva, because he's got everybody's number. He's got your number more than you do. Believe me. He knows every fault you do, and he knows every sin you've done. Why? Because that's his job. He's got to, or else he can't be a prosecutor. So imagine what he feels when he cannot prosecute. And that's what happens on Yom Kippur. It is the greatest act of chesed that the Baruch Hashem could do for us, to judge us without a prosecution. And it is what saves us. And when you think about it, since prosecution or dinam is fundamental to the Bria, it's completely against the character in that sense, or the plan of the Baruch Hashem, to have a day without a prosecution. You have to realize what that means. It's like the Supreme Court was called off one day, and they can't do anything. Meanwhile, everybody can do whatever they want. So any tshuva you do, imagine that. Any tshuva you do, I don't care if the Sultan would be laughing it off. It's accepted. Why? Because there's no prosecution. How's that for a deal? Right. It's accepted. Any hero tshuva you have, even if it would never pass muster, as they say, during the year, it passes on Yom Kippur. So the question then for us is, that's incredible. How can we let this opportunity fly by? If any tshuva you do, even if you say, today's Yom Kippur, maybe I should think about what I'm doing. Maybe it's not so good and so on, And maybe I should think about it at least, Huh? Think about it? What's that supposed to mean? So, but the Sultan's not there to say, excuse me, what? You want to think about it? Are you kidding? You see? But he's not there. So all of a sudden Bezin says, hey, thinking about it is also tshuva. We accept it. Whatever the weight is, it doesn't mean the Bezin is not fooled, Whatever the weight is of that tshuva, whatever the sincerity is, they will accept it, right? You can't beat that chesed, you see, you can't. The problem is people do not realize how far the love of the Baruch Hashem goes for the Klal Yisrael. And the truth is that the Baruch Hashem, like he says, Ki lo ekpoitz b'mois harasha. And it's not just Jews, it's even Goyim. The Baruch Hashem does not want to destroy Goyim. You see that by Kriyas Yamsuf, where he said to the Malachim, you're singing, by Kriyas Yamsuf, when he was killing the Egyptians, and believe me, they deserved it, right? The Malachim started singing Shira. They started singing Shira, right? So Baruch Hashem said, what are you doing? Ma'aseh Yodai Tova B'Yam, my handiwork is drowning in the sea, and you're singing Shira? Can't do that. Meanwhile, the Jews did sing Shira because they're entitled, because they're the ones that were afflicted by the Egyptians. So they're singing Shira that they were redeemed. But the Malachim never suffered because of the Egyptians. So you have no right to sing Shira, because in the end, God is destroying his handiwork, which he doesn't want to do. So the chesed of the Baruch Hashem, it really is, as they say, international. It's everybody. But how much more is it for the Jews? Because they're the ones who do the tikkun. You don't realize something. Without the Jews, there's no bria, because there's no tikkun, and therefore the Baruch Hashem doesn't come back. You don't realize how central that is, essential for the bria. Why do you think the Jews have existed for thousands of years? Why? Luck? Do you realize that the Jews can never be exterminated? Nobody did it. Hitler, Yamach Shemoy, Haman, they all tried. They all failed. And so will Iran, which is a whole discussion in itself. And so will, and so will Russia, and all these Rishayim, Gemurim, and so on. Why? Because you cannot destroy the only factor in creation that will bring the tikkun. God will not allow it. So what are they going to do? Fight God? Of course not. Why do you think that's why? That's why the Jews are indestructible. Because they're the only ones who can do tikkun. A goy can also do tikkun, only if he becomes Jewish. If he remains a goy and becomes a Noahide, which means he observes the laws, he can get olam haba, but he can never get the olam haba of a Jew. Never. Because he did not do the tikkun. He could do the tikkun if he becomes Jewish. That's up to him. But without becoming Jewish, you cannot get the reward that is destined for those people that did the tikkun. Even though they'll get olam haba, which they will, because God is just. If they're righteous, they will get it, and so on. You see, so we now begin to realize the incredible opportunity of Yom Kippur, which is here in a couple of days. Do anything, you see, think about it, and that will be accepted. Unbelievable opportunity, you see. So we realize something incredible. What you're looking at, right, which is what? Which is the Elul, the warning, Rosh Hashanah, the tikkun adjustment, right? The assessment and the adjustments, right? And then you're looking at Aseret Yemei Tshuva, the appeals process, right? And then you're looking at Yom Kippur without a prosecutor. I mean, what more can the Rebbe Hashem do? Anything else? Yes. There is something he does. Right. It's even the greatest chesed of all. What is that? And that's Sukkos. And that is the reason for the simcha. We don't realize what Sukkos is. I mean, we know what we do. We have the lulav and esrog, right? We have that. We have the sukkah, right? We have the simcha, right? That's true. But why? What is it all about, Sukkos? Because Sukkos is the greatest chesed the Rebbe Hashem ever did for us. What is that chesed? I will tell you. And you'll understand why there's a sukkah and why there's the daled minim. You see? And that will complete the scenario, the symphony of Tishrei. What is that? There was a big problem by Matan Torah. The Jews left Egypt and they had accomplished an incredible, a remarkable ruchnistic, spiritual task. What was that? Now, I can say it in words, but we don't understand what it really means. What they did is, after Egypt, 210 years, whatever, of slavery, they were able to eject evil from their body. We don't realize it, but we're walking around with a different type of creation that Adam had. When Adam was created, he was created without Satan. The Satan was in the form of a snake, or that was the manifestation of the Satan, right? The Nochash HaKadmoni, right? And he tried to tempt Chava and Adam to sin. But he had no influence over their body. He could talk to them as a logical argument, but he couldn't, he had no power over them. You see, he was external to man, to the body of man. Once Adam sinned, because he believed the Satan, what his argument was and so on, right? He believed the Satan. So the einish is that the Satan, or the evil of the Satan, now is able to latch on to the physical universe. You see, so the Satan now enters the mind of man, and he becomes the Yetzer Hara. No longer is the Yetzer Hara snake outside of you. He's inside of you, right? And he gets up in the morning with you, and he's already busy trying to get you to sin all day long. But that's different. That means the relationship between Adam, man, and evil changed. Until then it was external, and now it became internal. You see. So Adam Rishon now had the Yetzer Hara. This was the problem. But how does a Satan do it? Because he now has the ability to pervade your body, literally, with some type of a force. That force is called zoyama. Pollution, contamination. It's called the zoyama, right? And it's in us. What is the idea of zoyama? Zoyama is the destructive force, energy of the Satan. We don't know how it works because we don't even know what Tuma is or zoyama, whatever. But he's able to control your body. The entire physical universe is controlled by the satanic entry into the human body. So therefore, Adam Rishon now he had a Yetzer Hara. Incredible. What's the manifestation of this Yetzer Hara? Because not only does it tempt us to do evil, but it tempts us to sin, you see. And not only that, the Satan is what's called a demolition expert. He destroys. That's what he's great at. So once he entered your body, he now can kill you, ultimately. So death now comes, and that's what the Baruch Hashem said. On the day that you eat it, you will die. Why? Because the Satan will enter, and his whole objective is to get you to sin and destroy you. But now he's inside of you. So the human body changed. It now became subject to death. And there's actually molecular changes that happen as a result. There's a whole molecular biology that's part of that, and that's why people die, because theoretically the cell can reproduce forever, but it stops reproducing after 50 times. What stops it? Telomeres. I don't want to get into the whole biological structure, but before Adam sinned, there was no telomeres, so you lived forever, you see? But now, with telomeres at the end of your chromosomes, every time the cell divides, one falls off, and when they all fall off, you're finished. Without that, you live forever, right? So that's in the human body, you're subject to death. But it's not only the human body, all living organisms die. Bugs, it doesn't make a difference. Nothing survives forever, you see, because of the zoyama. That's what kills us, right? But the amazing thing, it's not just organic, it's inorganic. There's a concept called the second law of thermodynamics, which means all energy always dissipates. If you go into a hot room and you don't give more heat, guess what? It gets cold because the energy dissipates. That's death, but it's death of inorganic matter. In any case, without getting too heavy into this, so we're all walking around with zoyama. Guess what? We got to get rid of the zoyama. And that's Chiyas HaMesim. You see, we got to get rid of the zoyama. So what was remarkable is the Jews got rid of the zoyama for the first time in history when they left Egypt. And the Gemara says this, it's not even a zoya. The Gemara said that when they left Egypt and they stood in front of Har Sinai, they had no more zoyama. It says that in Gemara. It's not even a zoya. You see, for the first time in history, before Adam's sin, we duplicated Adam. And by the way, that's exactly what the Mashiach does, and that's what Chiyas HaMesim is. God will destroy the Satan, get rid of the zoyama, and we live forever. But I don't get into that, how the whole thing is returned to what it was by Adam Rishon before the sin. But in any case, but here was the problem. The Satan was expelled from the body, right? I'm telling you what really happened, although it's not, it's written in more the Zoya and so on, right? Ramchal. The zoyama was expelled, right? So they were not the same humans that we were, right? We don't even know what they were, but they were not subject to death, you see, without getting into that. But in any case, so what was the problem? So the Satan was expelled, which means the Satan, who was still the Yetzer Hara, he could only influence them like the snake, try to convince them to sin, build an egel, right? And that's why he made a coffin. The Medrash says he made a coffin appear in the sky with Moshe Rabbeinu in the coffin, and the Jews thought he was dead. Well, if he's dead, we need a God. He was only able to influence them externally, which is interesting, because he no longer had command as the Yetzer Hara over their body. What did the Jews do? They sinned. So what they did is they reintroduced the zoyama back into the body. And that's the whole concept of what Pesach is really all about. That's why Chometz represents the zoyama, Matzah represents what they were before that. But in any case, without getting into that, what was the problem? The Rebbeinu Shalom was very angry, right? Moshe Rabbeinu knew, right? When was it? Shiva B'Tammuz. Comes down the mountain, because the Rebbeinu Shalom told them, your nation says, they've done what? They have sinned, right? Get thee down. Fine. Moshe comes down and sees the Egel Hazov, right? And that was a rebellion against the Rebbeinu Shalom, right? And the Rebbeinu Shalom told them, I want to destroy them. Achala Oisam, right? I will destroy them, right? So Moshe Rabbeinu was an incredible leader. You begin to understand what a leader has to do, right? He immediately comes down. So the first thing you got to do is get rid of the Egel, right? And comes down, and of course, he did everything and so on and so forth, But I have to say one thing which is very important. Moshe Rabbeinu, it's very strange what he said. He really should have said, all those who didn't sin, come to me. And the whole tribe of Levi would have done that. And not all the Jews sinned, right? He didn't. He said, Mila Hashem Elai, who is to God, come to me. What do you mean? You should have said, whoever didn't sin, come to me. And the rest of the people, whatever, they'll die, whatever, and so on, But he didn't say that. Moshe Rabbeinu was revealing a profound secret of what your tshuva has to be. And in many ways, this is one of the greatest arguments you can tell the Rebbeinu Shalom to change your Yom Kippur. And I will tell you, 3 words, Mi Lashem Elai. Who is to God? What you need to say is this, Rebbeinu Shalom, I have sinned, there's no question about that. And I have done that which is not right in your eyes. This is the charata, which is the essence of tshuva, by the way. You have to say that to Rebbeinu Shalom. But I want to say something. What tshuva I do want to offer is this, that no matter what happens to me in this life, I will never abandon you. Never. I will always be loyal to you, even if I sin. That will save you. And that's what Moshe Rabbeinu said. You did the Chet Egel, okay, but who is still to God? Even though you did the Chet Egel, Mi Lashem Elai, come to me, right? It means what Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, the key is, okay, you sinned, right, but you need to do tshuva. What is the tshuva? You need to say, I will always remain loyal, never abandon the Rebbeinu Shalom. You see, that's what he told them. A very profound secret of what is the ikar of tshuva. Don't abandon God, no matter how bad it gets out there. And believe me, it's bad. So what does Moshe Rabbeinu do? Destroys the Egel, whatever, he kills the Jews, whatever. He goes running back to the Rebbeinu Shalom, right? And he says, please, don't kill them. So there's a whole, whatever, sichsuch, argument, whatever, and the Rebbeinu Shalom says, okay, I won't kill them. So Moshe Rabbeinu achieved the first success. At least God won't kill them. But wait a minute, the Jews are the Mesaknim. They do the tikkun, right? What about that? Okay, you won't kill them, but maybe he'll say, the Rosh will say, look, they fooled around, they failed. That's it. I will take away the ability to do the tikkun and to give them Olam Haba. So Moshe Rabbeinu went up a second time, right? To beg the Rosh, don't let them still do the tikkun, please. That's why he went up the second time. And then he comes down again and goes up a third time. Because Moshe Rabbeinu was incredible, a leader. He knew, okay, so Moshe could say, okay, I'll let them do the tikkun, but guess what? I'm not going to hedge all my bets on Klal Yisrael. I'll give the tikkun ability to somebody else besides Jews. So Moshe Rabbeinu comes up the third time and says, don't give it to anybody else. What a leader. That's what he did. And the Rebbeinu said, I mask him. And therefore the Rebbeinu did what? He restored the covenant, the agreement that the Jews will not die, they will do the tikkun, and nobody else will do the tikkun, guaranteeing that the Jews must survive. You don't realize what that is. That means there is nothing, no force in creation that can kill the Jews en masse. It's impossible. The Jews must survive because we're the only ones that do the tikkun. And if Hashem allows us to be destroyed, it's over. The whole universe, justification is gone. That was an unbelievable act that the Rebbe Shem did because of Moshe Rabbeinu. Not that the Rebbe Shem didn't want to do it. You don't realize something. He was not going to destroy the Jews. He wanted to see how much will Moshe Rabbeinu extend himself to save his people. What kind of leader is he? That's why he said, I will make you a great nation. Because he couldn't destroy the Jews. He promised Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, right, that they will do the tikkun, they will get the land and so on. So you can't kill the Jews. As the Rebbe Shem said, okay, I'll make you Klal Yisrael. So Moshe Rabbeinu said, no, I'm not taking it. So you're stuck. You have to keep the Jews alive. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu did. So he gave up and he said, erase me from your sefer. He was willing to die. Doesn't make a difference. Without the Jews, his justification is over. And he was willing, that's the leader that Moshe Rabbeinu was, to give up his own life. It's incredible. And the Baruch Shem, of course, would mask him, and therefore we are indestructible because of that. So what did the Baruch Shem then do? So here's the main idea, which the Vilna Gaon says, that on the first day, Tes Vav Tishrei, the Anonei HaKoved returned. What is the Anonei HaKoved, really? The Anonei HaKoved is the physical symbol that we are guaranteed to survive. That's what it is. So Baruch Shem says, okay, I'm going to come back with the clouds of glory, and they will survive. That's the guarantee. I will never do that again. Okay? But wait a minute. So Baruch Shem says, I'm going to reinstate the agreement. Even though you guys broke the agreement by the sin of the golden calf, I'm going to reinstate it. And therefore, you need to have at least 2 mitzvahs that reflect that. You need to sit in the sukkah. And this is all about the reinstatement of the agreement. And that is why there's such incredible simcha. V'somachta b'chagecha 3 times. Because the Rebbe Shem reinstated the agreement, and therefore he reinstated the anhaga that we must survive and get Olam Haba. That is the guarantee. So we sit in a sukkah. The main part of the sukkah is the schach, and the schach means we are always protected by the Rebbe Shem. That's the guarantee. In Hashkafa, it's called the anhaga sayichud. It is the anhaga of God who is supreme that will always protect us and get us into Olam Haba. But that's his end of the deal, right? That we survive for Olam Haba, right? But what about our end of the deal? We need to do the mitzvahs. That's the lulav and esrog, right? And there are many ways to look at the lulav and esrog, what it symbolizes. But basically, right, esrog is gematria 610, and then 3 simonim, right? Lulav, hadassam, and aravas, 613. So what we do is we shake the lulav and esrog in all the directions of heaven, saying that no matter where you lead us, we will always do the mitzvah as best as we can. That's the meaning. So the lulav and esrog is our contribution. It's like 2 signatures. Our signature is the mitzvah of lulav and esrog. His signature is the sukkah. And to seal the deal, 7 days or 8 days, right, is the Rebbeinu Shalom's, our simcha, and Shmini Atzeres is his simcha, right, is the Rebbeinu Shalom's holiday, and that seals the deal. So what Sukkot is about is the reinstatement of the contract between us and the Rebbeinu Shalom. And that is why there's such incredible amount of simcha. You see? So take a look at all this. You now understand what Rosh Hashanah is, what Elul is, what Rosh Hashanah is, what Aser Simei Tshuva is, right? What Yom Kippur is. And you now understand what Sukkos is. Look at the theme here. The theme is that we are under a biblical contract, if you want to use that word, with the Borei Olam, the Rebbe Shem himself. And it can never be broken, because that's the Shvuah. It has to go to the descendants of Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. Very important idea. And this, in many ways, is the month of Tishrei. That's really what it's all about. Now, there was once a Rebbe, called the Zvila Rebbe, who was a very great man. In fact, he was a tremendous Balmoifis, which means a miracle worker, you know. I could tell you one miracle from him, which is astounding. A Jew, he used to live in Russia, and a Jew came home, and all of a sudden he comes into his, this was on Shabbos, and he comes home, opens up his door, takes a look, and there's a guy, a dead Russian, in his kitchen. Obviously the guy wanted to break in, and he probably had a heart attack, or whatever, and he just died in the guy's kitchen. And this man went crazy. Because if the Russians find out, there goes the blood libels, there goes everything. So what did he do? He runs back to the Zvila Rebbe. Now the Zvila Rebbe was a very interesting person. He was a Balmoifis. In fact, they go to his son's kever in Yerushalayim, Goldstein, whatever. And he goes running to the Zvila Rebbe, who, like I say, was a Balmoifis miracle worker, one of those, right? And he says, I just found a dead Russian in my house, right? And he's dead, I can't even move the guy, you know, whatever, you know. If the Russians find out, there's going to be a pogrom. So the Zvila Rebbe says, listen carefully. Imagine, go over to my kitchen, right? And go over to the cholent, take out some cholent from my kitchen, the pot. His wife's cholent, right? Take it, go to your house, and put some of the cholent into the mouth of the goy. That's all. That's some kind of advice. I mean, his wife's cholent must have been incredible. But can it resurrect the dead? I don't know. You know, who knows what kind of recipe she had. What did he do? Went home, right? Take some cholent, put it in the mouth of the goy. The guy's dead, right? And all of a sudden, the goy gets up, dead, walks out of the door into the forest, and then drops dead. That's the Zvila Rebbe, what we're dealing with, right? So he was an interesting Rebbe. So the miracle got out. I mean, it's incredible. And he had to run away because everybody was now piling in for brachas, right? So he ran to Eretz Yisrael, and nobody knew who he was at all. You know, finally there was some guy who came from his town and came to that shul, whatever, and he saw he's sitting there. He said, do you have any idea who this person is? Which of course they didn't. And word got out, and Nebuchadnezzar was caught again, and so on. So he was an interesting person. He used to work. He used to work for a living. Now most Rebbes don't, because they're involved in Ruchnius, whatever. Apparently he felt that he didn't want to take advantage of that, and he used to work. So a chassid, and I'm telling you this for this part, not the first part, just to show you who we're dealing with, and therefore the truthfulness of what he said. So the chassid comes over to him and says, Rebbe, I have a question. Yes, what is it? So he says, I don't understand something, you know. What's the difference between you and me? Why is it I'm the chassid and you're the Rebbe? Why? Because I say Kiddush, you say Kiddush, I say Kiddush too, right? I work and you work. So why are you the Rebbe and why am I the chassid? Interesting question, right? What did the Zvila Rebbe answer? Very profound concept. He said the following. He said, I'll tell you the difference. When I am in my store or whatever work I do, I'm thinking of Kiddush. When you're saying Kiddush, you're thinking of your store. That's a very profound concept. What is that? What he's saying is that it's not so much where you are or what you're doing. It's where do you want to be? That's your center. What do you think about during the day? Where do you want to be? So I'm in my store, which is true, but do I really want to be in my store? You know, making money, whatever? No. I want to be learning Torah. I want to be in Oived. I want to be a Dovik in the Rebbe. That's where I want to be. So that's really who I am. That's my center. That's my essence. You, however, you're saying Kiddush, but where's your mind at? It's not in the Kiddush. You know, well, did I make enough money? I'm making Kiddush. Did I make enough money today? You know, and so on. Enough money, you know, do I have enough inventory? Maybe I need more advertising. Excuse me, you're saying Kiddush. You know, what are you thinking? You ever see, you know, guys sometimes when they Shmona Esrei? You know, there was once a guy in a shul saying Shmona Esrei, and he was, you know, shuffling around. So the rabbi of the shul comes over to him and says, Shalom Aleichem. So the guy says, you know, when he got after the Shmona Esrei, he said, Shalom Aleichem, why? He says, you look like you've been traveling around the world. I say, Shalom Aleichem, what are you thinking about? That's your essence. That's what the Zvila Rebbe said. And it's a very important concept. Many times we think what? Well, what do we do? I got to go to work, I got to make money, and so on. That's not the issue. The Baruch wants to test us in many, many different types of situations. That's why life is so varied. Now, some people have a mission. Their mission is to learn Torah, to give shiurim, to be a Rav. That's their mission. So their mission is to be ruchni, to work ruchni. But that's a moedik schus. We don't know why, but that's what the Baruch assigned them. And therefore, they have a mazel. Their mazel is that they're offered a job as a Rebbe, as a Rav, or whatever, not because they worked for it. This is what the Baruch did. This is your mission. Your mission is Yaakov, Yoshiv Holam, Kedusha. Then there are other people that got to go to Wall Street. They got to go to the Diamond District. Wherever Jews have to go, right? And you think, who wants to go to these places? There are so many nisyonis and so on. So their mission is Esav, to combat evil. You see, but they both have the mission, right, of what's called hispashtis kedusha, to bring kedusha, and the other one is kfiyah sorah, to subjugate evil, to be tested and still. Now you're going to ask, well, what's the mission of the guy learning Torah? His mission is, how much Torah is he going to learn? How many coffee breaks do you take? We don't realize everybody has an nisayon. How many times do you see guys talking and learning, right? And then they take a break for 3 hours, a coffee break, right? But that's their tafkid. How long or how much are you going to devote to the Torah? You see? Whereas the other guy's mission is more what's called more mundane, more whatever you want to call it, and so on. We don't know why. It's all the Shurish Neshama. We don't know why he's assigned to that, and why he's assigned to that. But the critical thing of all of that, no matter where you are, the key is, where do you want to be? That's the key. Do you want to be in Ruchnias, right? And doing things so when you come home at night, you learn Torah, you learn with your kids, right? Or you learn in kollel, whatever you do and so on, right? At night and so on. And now there's many kollels that learn at night. Or, right, you want to not do that and watch TV, you're on the internet all night, whatever the nisyonos are. You see, where do you want to really be? And so on. That is the key. And that's what the Zvila Rebbe really said. Now, what's very important, which I really say, I want to tell you something. What is the weapon of the Satan? What does he want to do? That is the question. I want to tell you what the real strategy of the Satan is, and if you're aware of it, you can beat the Satan. Most people are not aware of this. What is the greatest enemy of the Torah, of the Satan? What is it really? And therefore, what is that which the Satan does not want you to do? He will try anything to stop you. What is it? And the answer is ignorance. Don't think about what life is all about. Don't think that there's a God. Don't think that there's a spiritual world long beyond this. You see, think of the world. Think of, jobs, money, Wall Street, investments. Think of that. Think of pleasure. Think of vacations and so on. That's what he wants. But how? So he has to get you to stop to learn Torah. Because all the wisdom of what we know is in the Torah. In fact, that's what it says in the Gemara in Kedushim. Tavlin. The Baruch Shem created the Torah as a tavlin, which is an antidote, sort of, to the Satan or sinning. Why? Because the greatest weapon of the Torah is knowledge. It tells us of what's real. That's it. Besides the kedusha of the ruchnias, I'm not even going into the power of what the Torah, the kedusha, the holiness of the Torah. But just on a simple level, it tells us reality. It's an incredible book that is a revelation of what reality is. The Satan does not want you to learn. That is the greatest enemy of the Satan, and therefore he's going to try to stop you at every turn. And there's many ways he can do that, and I don't even want to go into that. How he actually stops yeshivas from learning Torah. I don't want to go into that. It's a whole discussion in itself and so on. But that's what he does. But the next question is, okay, that's his strategy. Keep them ignorant or else I'm finished. Maybe. But wait a minute. How do I make sure that you won't learn Torah? How? How do I make sure you won't think about Ruchnius? You won't think about God. You won't think about doing mitzvahs and chesed and everything that the Jew is supposed to do in Torah, right? What's his strategy? That you're dealing with probably the greatest malach that ever lived, right? Which is astounding. His knowledge of human behavior is off the charts because he knows everybody's weakness. So what does he do? I will tell you what he does. So you'll be one ahead, okay? You know what the greatest danger to the Sultan is, and that is knowledge, Torah. That's his greatest danger, right? But how does he stop you? And the answer is one word: distraction. I gotta keep him busy. God forbid that they start thinking and they have free time, right? So he's an Eloi, a genius, right? Why do you think there's an internet? Why? Do you have any idea how many people fall? Because they're all day on the internet, right? It's the greatest distraction ever known to man, bar none. That's number one. What about smartphones? Whenever you go on a bus or anything, you ever notice what you see? Everybody's looking at their phone. It's like, whatever happened? It's like, it's like attached to their hand. You know, it's becoming a human organ. It's called a phone organ, right? And it's astounding. You know, they have these pictures where 3 or 4 people are sitting on a bench and they're not talking to each other. They're all looking at their phones. That's the reality today. You see, smartphones. Then there's all other kinds of stuff. There's movies and there's television, right? There's all kinds of this. And then there's music, all right? There are people that have 10,000 records on their smartphones, and guess what? They listen all day. And then of course there's sports. Well, I can't even begin to name the amount of distractions. Now, I'm not saying you can't do anything. No, if you feel you need a break, I'm not going into that parsha. If you'll need a break just to come down and relax for a minute, that's one thing. But these are addictive. They're all addictive, every one of these things. But what's the purpose of this? To distract you. That's what it is. You know, it used to be, you know, I remember, I'll never forget, you have to excuse the mushal. You know, I once went into the bathroom, right? And all of a sudden, and there's a stall there, right? And all of a sudden I hear a voice in the stall. Some guy's talking on the phone. So I said to him, I understand something. You finally have one place that you can have menucha, right? You got to talk on the phone even in the bathroom? You know, come on. I didn't say anything, but that's how much the Sultan has captured the human imagination. It's unbelievable. You know, it used to be that if a guy was in his car, what can he do? You know, so if he didn't have the radio, so he drove. And while he was driving, God forbid, he's thinking about Kedusha. He's thinking about God. Or maybe, where are you in life? You know, do you realize that there's a purpose and a mission? Today, forget about that. Today, it's all about smartphones. You know, you have immediately, there are people who talk on their phones all day long, and they can't stop. And meanwhile, they go into the street and get them killed while they're on a smartphone. I mean, you know, what is that called? It's called distraction. Why? Don't think. Because if you think, you will do tshuva. It will dawn on you that there's something wrong. What am I doing with my life? You see, that is the incredible distraction of the Sultan. That's his major strategy. And one more idea. Did you ever notice Yom Kippur comes? We try to do our best, right? And all of a sudden, next day, which is going to be Sunday, we go back basically to being exactly what we were before. So do you ever ask yourself a question, why doesn't it work? Why is it? It's like spinning your wheels. Why is it Yom Kippur is great, it's so serious, you know, maybe I shed a couple of tears or whatever and I'm mispal. Why doesn't the tshuva last? you ever wonder why? It's a good question. Why is it we are so vulnerable to sinning or not doing tshuva, even though we are ernst, as they say in Yiddish, we are sincere, so then why doesn't it work? What the answer is? I'll tell you the secret of that too, why it doesn't work, and why it may work, but it's much harder. In psychology, there's a certain concept called cognitive dissonance. What is cognitive dissonance? That means if you have a belief system that believes in a certain thing, right? And something comes along and contradicts it, guess what? You are going to, in many ways, either resist seeing that, you are going to deny the existence of the contrary idea. That's called cognitive dissonance. Okay? There used to be a popular theory, whatever, and so on, but it's an emes. We don't want to know things that are against our belief system. That's human nature. Here's the problem. We don't want to be Kedoshim. Think about that. We're our physical beings. We love physical, right? We are physical. We work physical. We need money, groceries. Then we go to restaurants, right? Right? I mean, it's incredible. I hate to mention this, but now you go to a restaurant, it costs $150 for a steak. That tells me how do these restaurants make a living? Obviously, they have a clientele, and so on. This is the problem. Many of us, deep down, we love physical. Even though we celebrate, for instance, okay, I want Pesach, but guess what? I'm going to Italy for Pesach, right? I got to combine. I don't mind going to a beach, right? As long as I have a kosher hot dog. What we've done is, in order to minimize the ruchnius, we combine it with tremendous physicality. I mean, just look what's going on in the Pesach. It's billion-dollar industries now to go everywhere, and it always includes a tour. I don't want to put it down, but I'm just saying this has become a tremendous emphasis. Whatever. Okay, I don't want to get too much into that, but this is the problem, and therefore it's cognitively dissonant. Since we love physicality, we love materialism, basically, because we are physical creatures, it's against the ruchnius of Yom Kippur. Think about that. What is Yom Kippur about? No eating, and so on. It's no, right? And it's all day, daven, right? After a while, how many of us can keep it up even for one day? Forget about 2 days. The miracle is Yom Kippur is more than 1 day, right? Because we can't do it. This is the problem. Why do you think Pesach is only a couple of days? Because how many days, unless you love matzah, can you eat matzah? We love chametz. We love to go into a bakery and eat chametz, and so on. The problem is ruchnius is against our nature. In the olden days, when you had tremendous gedolim, so then everybody, you could walk down the block and you had 5 gedolim who lived on your block in those days. Today, you're lucky if you can find one gadol in a whole city. They're all gone, whether it be COVID or whatever. We live in an unbelievable darkness, and we are supremely organized physically in every which way. And what we've done very cleverly is to combine the spiritual experience with the physical. God forbid we should give up the physical, and so on. When you look at the old stories of people of old, the ruchnis, they fasted all day, but not only that, you saw the ruchnis of these people, and so on. And today we're lucky, everybody wants what's called in Yiddish bakvemt, and so on. That's why, because it's very hard to change if you don't change your belief structure, right? Because it's cognitively dissonant from who you are. So you can tolerate for a day, but that's it. You see, and that is why we make all kinds of promises called New Year's resolutions, right? I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and I'm not going to speak Lashon Hara anymore, and so on, right? And the next minute, Sunday comes along, your friend comes over, and you chat Lashon Hara for the next hour and a half. You see why? Because it's not enough just one mitzvah. You got to change your goal. You need to become more ruchnistic. That's the answer. So then it won't be cognitively dissonant, because you've changed the goal. Your goal is to get to know God, is to get to know what Judaism is really about, what to know the plan of creation. What does God really want? Is it just the mitzvahs? No, it's much more than just the mitzvahs. It's a relationship with Him. That's what He wants. And that takes far more than just shaking the lulav and esrog. It's realizing what's the pnimius of Sukkos. And I always bemoan that fact. Why is it most people, what is a yontif? Well, first of all, you're off from work, right? That's the first, thank God for that, right? And then, wow, I hope my wife is really going to cook a great meal, right? And then I can schmooze with my friends, right? In shul or whatever. It's basically it's a physical holiday that's enhanced slightly with spiritual additions. But it's not really what it is. And it's unfortunate, and I chas v'shalom, I don't blame Klal Yisrael. The problem is, people don't know anything. They do not know the Hashkafa of what Judaism is. I always find it remarkable, I hate to say, when a Rav gets up and gives a Shabbos, let's say, Godel, right? It's not only that it's halakhic, that's fine, but there's hardly any ideas of Hashkafa. What is Pesach about, really? Why is there chometz and matzah? What is the Roshim telling us? What can we do? What is our avodah? You always hear, whatever, Gedolim or Rabbonim saying, well, we have to be this. Okay, how do I do it? Nobody ever says. You notice? They don't say. That's what you need. It has to be very practical. You need to learn Hashkafa. So therefore, I would recommend grab the Sforim of Hashkafa, especially Ramchal, and you learn, what does God want? Who is He? And so on. What does He expect? That's when you can change your goal. If you change your goal, there's no longer cognitive dissonance. And guess what? The tshuva you did on Yom Kippur will actually last till Tuesday. Thank you.